Hello and welcome to Corporate Culture, your podcast about cooperation, conflict, and culture at work. My name is Paul Emtsev, and today I speak with Caroline Zamor. Caroline is an experienced sustainability professional, and I'm very curious to know more about her work, what sustainability really means, and what we can actually do about it. Caroline, thank you very much for joining today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
It's really great that you made it to the podcast.
Yeah.
Caroline, when I think about sustainability, I think about obligations and I think about responsibility and things that we somehow have to do. When I hear you talk about sustainability, I feel that you are very passionate about it, that you really care about this topic. And that's why my first question would be, what makes you so passionate about sustainability?
I think this lies a little bit in my history. So I'm 42 now. When I started studying, there were no master degrees or bachelor degrees in sustainability development or the like. And I always say that it started with my professor who gave lectures in strategic management, but he was actually an environmental engineer. And he once raised the topic of, he called it corporate responsibility. And then it just clicked, sometimes you have those moments. Sometimes people tell you about those moments when it just clicked, and it did click for me in that lecture. I can still picture myself in the lecturing room. And I thought, I think this is it. Because before I actually studied textile and clothing design, so I thought I was going to be like a fashion professional at some point. And I did a long-term internship at a textile and clothing company. And then there were people in product management, and they were talking about, oh, should we put this flower application on the left or on the right side? And I thought I really couldn't care less. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, because the people who are passionate about their job, they're passionate about whether the flower is on the left or the right side. But I thought I will never be passionate about any of this. And so I was very grateful that my professor sparked interest in this. And when you go even back, so this is usually the story I tell when I'm at an interview for a job or in a professional context. But it started actually much earlier, because I was a volunteer at the fair trade stand at the local market that we had. I think I was 14 or 15. And so something about social justice was just always something that I thought was important. Yeah.
So when you say corporate responsibility, that means that your entrance into sustainability was through the corporate world, right?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. So again, I did volunteer at this fair trade stand, but really about sustainability was through corporations, because I studied international business, so it was always quite clear to me that I would work in the business world, which can be quite shallow, and I'm still to this day, I'm always shocked when people are just about profit. And then when I thought, okay, this could be my thing in this, help companies raise awareness that they have a responsibility that goes beyond paying on time and bringing products to the market that won't harm people. And my professor, he was actually talking about the tobacco companies, and then how can they fulfill their responsibility? And in my personal opinion, they can't, because they're selling you a product that makes you sick. So this is when I kind of clinged on the topic, and I only let go once for a job as a product manager at a textile company. And after 2 days, I applied for sustainability jobs again. Yeah.
Wow. And is sustainability for you also a feel-good topic? Because I think to most people, it's not really a feel-good topic. It's more like, as you say, responsibility. We have to do it. We understand there's stuff we have to change. Is it for you to some extent also something fun, or are you driven mostly by this responsibility, as you said?
I would say it's both. When sometimes, you know, people ask you what you like most about your job, and I always say I love when people get it, you know, when people just get it,
Mm,
and when they think, oh, this is fun, this is what I can do. And when it's not like outsourced to the sustainability professionals, because everyone in their job in the corporate world, we talked about this before. So you don't have to be a sustainability professional to work in sustainability. You can also choose, you know, to think about what can I do in my circle of responsibility, circle of influence. What can I do? So to me, it's very severe topics that we talk about. You know, it's the
mm,
climate crisis, and it's not fun.
mhm.
Um, but it's, you know, you can make it fun, or you can make it, you know, you can make it a joyful experience, like when you connect with people on the topic, and then when you really feel that you have an impact, because this is what everybody wants, you know, we want to have an impact on the world, be it a positive one, a negative one, not judging here. But yeah, I think if you create impact, then it's always a good thing, even if it's a heavy topic.
Yeah, yeah. And I like the distinction that you're making. So it's not about being a serious or a fun topic, but um, I see, for example, a lot of people who also have very good intentions to change the world for the better, but on the way to their goal, they are really struggling with themselves, because for many of the things we have to change outside, it's not really fun, and sometimes it's actually really hard, and actually
Yeah,
also very hard um, to stay in these kind of jobs. And also when you look at burnouts and all kinds of other factors for of people who work in these very intensive jobs that are needed but that are not really fun, I think it's
yeah,
important, as you say, that you can find some funny aspects or some things that you like on the way,
yeah.
as you mentioned.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you also just have to have some black humor with it, you know? Because in the
Mm.
end, I don't know, I'm probably going to bet I'm going to be dead in 40 years.
Yeah.
Maybe in 50 years if I'm lucky. So it's also always good to know there's only so much I can do. There's only so much you can do, and not to get overwhelmed with it. I once had to do a task where I translated risk for risk database for CSR risks, so corporate social responsibility risks. And I had to do the quality management. So I was reading about all the wrongs in the world for 8 hours a day. And I could only do that one day. And then the next day I thought, okay, I can't do this again. I can do this for 2 hours, and then I have to do something fun because otherwise you will get depressed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's a really important point,
Yeah.
and I like that you started right with this corporate aspect of sustainability, because I think it's also useful to narrow down or to have an understanding of what sustainability actually means. And maybe
Mm.
you can share what your perspective on sustainability is. You already mentioned that you're mainly working in a corporate environment, but
Yeah.
what does sustainability as a term mean for you?
Yeah. This is the point where I have to look at my notes, because
Yeah.
I'd like to avoid giving personal definitions of topics that have been defined very well. Um, so in 1987, the UN published the Our Common Future report. It's also Our Common Futures report. It's also known as the Brundtland report, which is named after the Norwegian Prime Minister. And it defined sustainability, or it was called sustainable development, as a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Um, it's a bit abstract, but then if you translate it in a simpler language, it means live the way that future generations can live the same way, and we're absolutely not doing that. You've probably heard of the calculations that we're using 2 planets at the moment. So if everybody would live the way that we live today in every part of the world, we'd need more than 1 planet. So we're living everything but a sustainable life. And um, sustainability, especially in German language, is often linked to the environmental side of it. But in these days, you have to also think of social sustainability, because you cannot have, you cannot have a healthy society in an unhealthy environment, but it also works the other way around. Yeah. So social justice, etc., is also very important, because I hope it doesn't get to the point where we have to decide whether we will have a collapsed planet from the environmental side, or a collapsed planet because societies won't work anymore. So it's just a theoretical experiment, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really can relate to that. And I would be also curious, because you are so interested in sustainability and you know a lot about it, how has this interest also influenced your career choices? So I know that you worked in many different companies, organizations. Maybe you can share a bit about how that also guided you through your career path so far.
Yeah. So I've never worked except one excursion that I had in the textile industry. I've always worked in the sustainability context. So after my master's degree, I thought, okay, this is what I want to do. And you were actually at these times, there was around 2006, 2007, you were fighting for internships in this field. It was a very small community, and you usually knew, oh, this guy applied for the internship. I hope he doesn't get it because I want it. Now it's different, now there are so many job offers. And I started working at a smaller consulting firm, and then I went to a big retail company, supermarket chain. But most of my life, I've been working in nonprofits, which have a sustainable mission, or purpose mission, if you want to call it. And now, since 2.5 years, I'm working in the real corporate world. But I've always worked in this field, and as I mentioned before, I try to do something else. And then one of the managing directors came in and asked me, "Oh, Caroline, how are you liking your new job? Have you settled in?" And I thought, I'm a very bad liar, so I can't lie. So I said, well, it's just been the second day. Still everything is new to me. And that evening, I started looking for jobs, because I thought, I just don't care about what I do here. And it's not fair to the company that they pay me for it.
Yeah, yeah. Are you more interested in what the company itself is doing, so the output of the company, when you screen, for example, what are good sustainable jobs, or good jobs in the sustainability sector, or is it more important to you what your impact is within the company?
It's a good question. I've done both, or I am doing. I've done one thing, and now I'm doing the other thing. So I've mostly worked in organizations, as I said, nonprofits, who had a real purpose. I can still quote the purpose, the vision, and the mission of Fairtrade Germany, and that was ages ago, because it was magnetic, and it really brings the people together, because I remember there was one lunch break where we asked ourselves, how is it that we get along so well in this organization? And then one of us said, well, because it attracts like-minded people, people who really want to make an impact in the world. Then on the other hand, I am career driven, and the organization and I just didn't match anymore. So I was looking for a different job. And I think it's always a little bit of a struggle for sustainability professionals. Do I go into the corporate world where you make good money, and you have all the benefits, and you can actually make a huge impact on people, even if it's slow, because most of the time it's either you're alone, or it's a small team. Or do I go to an organization whose whole purpose, whose own whole existence evolves around sustainability? And for my future, I think I can see myself going either way again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's important to know, and we've talked about this before as well, it's important to know that you don't have to be a sustainability professional to work a sustainability job, because that's not the goal, you know, because I want my colleagues in controlling and travel management, event management, marketing, business development. I want my colleagues to figure out what they can do in their everyday tasks to be more sustainable than yesterday.
Now that you say more sustainable than yesterday, I definitely see also this need to become more sustainable. And I also remember what you said before about the two planets and the clear, unsustainable way that we are living at the moment. If we dive a bit more into really understanding sustainability itself, would you say that it's in theory possible to lead a fully sustainable life? Or is it just an ideal that we can move towards, but it's not very realistic?
I would say it's the latter. But then again, if you look at indigenous people, for example, they live a truly sustainable life because they've been living that lifestyle for centuries, for thousands of years. And they have no choice, you know. And I actually had a very interesting lunch break with a friend of mine who sat down with indigenous people in Colombia. And she said that they see their mission to take care of the earth, to take care of the environment, not the way that we're doing it, you know, not the way that we're like separating our waste and driving, taking the bike to go to work. So they say that's their mission. But I looked up some numbers, and I think half of the population lives in urban areas. So so for at least 50% of the population, it's very, very difficult to live a sustainable life. But as you said, you know, strive towards it. You know, that's the goal. You know, be better than yesterday. Acknowledge your privileges. Acknowledge that what you're doing is not very sustainable, and then it can be very hard because you have to let go a lot of comfort. If you
Yeah.
live a more sustainable life, that's just the way it is, you know.
Yeah, completely. I mean, also I struggle with it myself. I'm very much aware of what we should do and what would be more sustainable. And I try to do some things, but at the same time, for example, I still take flights sometime because I have to fly to different projects professionally, sometimes also for holidays, which could be avoided. I could also not do it. If I would be very strict about it, I could also just choose a job where I can go by bike, which maybe would be less interesting. Again, trade-off between what I like to do and what maybe has to be done.
Yeah.
So I really see that point. But I would be curious, does it still make sense to be a little bit sustainable? Like if we say we try, but then we still need 1.5 Earths instead of 2, is that, would you say that's still worth it? Or shall we go for either we reach the goals or we should just not even try?
I'm going to be a bit cynical here and say that's a very German approach, because I know this from like 15 years ago when I started working there. We would always look towards the UK and how, you know, how Marks and Spencer and all the big retailers, how they would write their sustainability reports, and they would write things in there like saying, well, when they did their reporting, they said, oh, we didn't reach the goal. This is something you would never ever read in a German sustainability report. I think, you know, prove me wrong. I'm open to something different. So I have a note that always comes up at my phone every day, and it says start anyhow. Or start anyway. Because if humankind would only do things if they were 100% sure they would succeed the goal at 100%, we'd probably still be living like in the Stone Age. Maybe not even that. We'd probably still be living in caves. And then it's also, once you go forward, you might not go back fully. For example, it was a very foreign idea to me a few years ago. I had a conversation with a colleague, and he asked me, "Oh, have you ever been to the US?" And I said, "Yeah, I have a couple of times." And I said, you? And he said, no. And I said, oh, is it because you don't like the US, you know, because many Germans, they have reservations toward the USA. And he said, no, it's not that. But back in the days, I didn't have the money as a student. And now that I do have the money, but I said, I'm not taking long haul flights. I'm traveling by train. And then I said, well, you won't get that far by train. And he said, well, you just have to think of traveling differently, you know? I'm going from Frankfurt, I'm going to Vienna, visiting some friends there. Then I'm going to Italy, to northern Italy by train. And that was completely foreign to me, that idea. And guess what I'm doing this summer holiday? I'm going to the south of France by train. You know, it can sometimes take you a few years. And it can be fun to try new things, like zero waste shops. Have you ever been in a zero waste shop?
No, not yet.
It's when when you buy groceries in bulk, like rice and lentils and all of this healthy stuff. And I used to go every week, and then I thought it's just not worth it, you know, carrying these heavy containers around. So now I find new ways, and that's okay to try something and then go back. But you know the discussion in Germany with the Deutsche Bahn.
Yeah.
Most people, be it in my corporate job, be it in my private circle, some people would just say, "Oh, Deutsche Bahn is, you know, it's horrible. I can't do it. I'm just, my mental health is more important than this. I can't go by train." And then one thing happens when they take the train, you know, when I've convinced them to take the train, and then they say, "I'm never going to try that again." And then this is just I think it's a question of mindset, you know.
Mm.
You know, when you're a baby and you started walking and it didn't work, you didn't say, "Oh, I'm never going to I'm never going to do that again." You just, you know, you just tried another time.
Yeah.
And
It's a really good point. It's a really good point.
and just,
And
you know, explore it and have fun with it, because a sustainable lifestyle can open you up um to so many interesting things.
yeah, I think it's a really good point. The first one that you mentioned, that of course progress itself also is depends on this mindset of saying, okay, let's try something even though we're not sure if we can make it. I really like
Yeah.
that. And also your example about the Stone Age, it made me think that even moving by train to France or to go on holidays in another country, back then it was like crazy distances,
Yeah.
right? So it's just that now we are used to flying to Thailand or wherever on holidays, but there was a time where going for the weekend from Frankfurt to Vienna, for example, would have been a crazy idea. Many people, they didn't even know what existed behind the next hill. So,
Yeah.
I also think
True.
that, yeah, I think it's our human nature probably is very much capable of not flying, for example, or having fun in a smaller
Mm.
circle or smaller environment. But what do you think about when we think about human nature uh, and in connection with sustainability? Would you
Mm.
say that being sustainable as a lifestyle, let's say, is that something that is natural to us? So if we
Mm.
look maybe at evolution or at our human nature, is it something that human beings are generally capable, or is that something that we have to actively train ourselves to do?
It's a big question. It's a huge question. And I'm not a psychiatrist or social scientist, or even historians could probably answer this question better. My personal view would be, if we talk about, the modern human being, like living in these days. So is it natural or is it not natural? I would say it's not natural, because we have so much comfort, and we've achieved so much technologically that, sustainability is sometimes, taking things away. And this is also just the reality, you know, it as you said, it is a heavy topic. It's about responsibility, and things can sometimes be harder, and we like our comfort, you know, we like, you know, taking a taxi to the airport, hopping on a plane, and then an hour later you're in a different country. I listened to a few podcasts about systemic theory, because I did a 1-year training about this, about transformation of organizations, and they said in one of those podcasts that a system always tries to survive, but with the lowest effort. You know, so once you have the comfort, it's hard to go back. And this also shows in what I do. It's harder, you know, I do meal prep almost every Sunday. So, you know, I bring my reusable containers, I cook for an hour or two, I bring this to work, so I have lunch. It's so much easier to go into my phone, order from the pickup place, you know, I have a really nice meal, get it in a single-use container. I pay I pay in the app. 5 minutes later, it's ready. I pick it up, I eat it, and then I throw it away. So there's so much comfort that comes with modern technologies and modern living, that sometimes it's hard to live against this. Yeah. And also, I once read that our brains are not accustomed to see so far in the future, no? Because we used to die at 30, you know? So we didn't really have to think about, oh, what happens in 30 years, what happens in 40 years, what happens in 50 years. I read that our brains are simply not very capable of thinking so far in the future.
Yeah. Thinking also about my own experiences, I think that probably morals or ethics play some role, right? I'm thinking, for example, when I'm hiking in the mountains, personally, I think I would never throw any trash on the floor, for example, or into the woods or something. You always find some trash, so it means some people do it. But I don't know what it is. Maybe it's you know, education from my childhood, or you know, my father always told me on hikes, you never do that, for respect for the mountains, whatever. So I feel that this is this probably moral reason that prevents me from doing that. But then I've recently been, for example, to Spain, and I didn't really understand their recycling system as a German who is very much interested in understanding what to put where. And I saw there were different containers, but then I also saw everybody just throwing everything in the same. And then I said, okay, for this 1 week, I will just throw everything in the same one. So this is for me a really relevant question, because I see it on myself. I cognitively understand the necessity for things, but then I also feel that at some point it's too complicated.
Yeah, I do understand. I mean, you know, it's almost a meme that the signs that you have above the trash cans in offices, for example. We have those too. But I find myself sometimes picking up trash from one bin and putting it in the other bin, because apparently that's too hard for some people to do. It's not an intellectual thing, it's out of habit, because guess what happens? It sometimes happens to me too. You know, I think about something else, and then I put it in the wrong bin. And then it's also a privilege, you know, to have the capacity to think about those things. When you were talking about throwing, you know, trash in nature, it's in Germany, you know, what you have to do is either you have to call someone and say, okay, I'm going to have your like a trash collection. Can you please pick it up, like mattresses and old furniture? Or you have to, if you don't have a car, you have to rent a car, load the car, drive to the recycling place and do it. And some people just don't have the capacity to do that. So And then you think it's quite complex. We tried to figure out where to put this single-use container from the salad place. And my colleague, she had to do research, a 30-minute research to find that out. This is just crazy. But then again, you know, separating the waste is like the least of our problems.
It's a good example because it shows the challenge of all of the things that have to be done, that should be done, but that we still don't do for whatever reason, even though it's apparently quite simple, right?
Yeah, I think you have to create create solutions and processes that, you know, by default you can't go wrong. And the default would, for example, in this, you know, find a solution that no one goes to the salad place and has food in a single-use container. Like, you know, get reusable bowls in it with the deposit system. Just have, you know, I don't know, 10, 15 stocked in the office, and then people can just grab it, which is, you know, something that I thought of and that we're going to do in our office.
Yeah, that brings me also to the next question, because now we had some examples on the individual level, and you just mentioned also the helpfulness or the usefulness of establishing some processes also for groups or for organizations. It's probably a complicated question, but do you think it's easier to be sustainable as a group, like on an organizational level? Is that easier to do than just every person being responsible for him or herself?
I think the answer is in the second word of your background. It's in the culture. You know, and I would also ask, or I would rephrase the question, where can you have the biggest impact? Because that's in the end what counts. You know, the impact is important. How much impact does this or another generate? And I would say on impact level, definitely in group level, teams, organizations that have the right culture and, you know, like-minded people, like a group of like-minded people, nothing's as powerful as that. And also, you know, some things just don't work on an individual level. If you think of the share economy, for example, you know, with who are you going to share your stuff with if there's not a second, third, hundreds individual? I would say it can be easier as an individual in some regard, you know, in some instances. And then it's easier for organizations and for teams to be more sustainable, because then you also have the sharing of experiences. And yeah, I think it's not an either-or question. There are a lot of factors that play into this.
And you having all this experience in very different companies and organizations, would you say that companies now really care more about sustainability than, let's say, 20 years ago? Because definitely my feeling is that we talk a lot more about it, for sure.
Yeah.
But is there really so much more impactful work going on? If you are allowed to speak openly about this.
Of course. Yeah. I can just, you know, cite studies. Unfortunately, I forgot the name of the NGO. It's a German climate NGO, and they assess sustainability reports, and they assess if the companies would do all the things that they write in their sustainability report, we would be so much further along in the whole climate crisis discussion. But you know, and we do talk about it more. Why is that? It's because of regulation, it's because of laws, it's also because, you know, companies want to attract talent, you know, Gen Z, there are different surveys and polls that you can interpret as Gen Z wants to work for companies who have a positive impact in the world, that have great D&I programs, so diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So we do talk about it more. Companies do more because they have to. It's also a little bit of the zeitgeist, I would say. But then on the other hand, you have companies rolling backwards or going backwards, like Unilever, for example. Unilever was the poster child of corporate sustainability. They had they had a strong program, goals, But then their shareholders, they changed, their CEO changed, and this is also how you can see how fragile this whole system is, because we live in a capitalist world. So the one who makes the most profit always wins. This is just the truth. And sustainability is sometimes contradictory to that. So companies talk about it more. And there's a great guy who's called David Willens. You can find him on LinkedIn. He's a director, and he's an absolute expert on sustainability communications. And I think a few days ago, he published a post that IKEA revised their climate goals. And he said, is it going backwards? Yes, but it's also going forward, because now it's more transparent and honest.
Yeah, good point. And I think we all got used to this term of greenwashing, right? I think I don't know, when I started working, I think the term was not very popular, and then it became very popular. And I think now everybody's aware of this, right? Also, when this big transition to renewable energy came, all the big coal companies and energy companies were like only showing their wind wheels and everything. So I think you are right that I mean, probably there's more awareness to it, and it's a step forward to be more transparent about what you actually do. You said that in the end, it's mostly about profit, or it's even only about profit. Do you know any other ways to incentivize companies to be more sustainable, if not for the profit? Are there any other levers there, or do we always have to go through the profit, as you said, through, for example, attraction for new talent and so on? Are there any other factors that companies care about?
I think we have to differentiate between companies with shareholders, listed companies, family-owned companies, smaller companies, bigger companies. For example, Porsche, which is it's a listed company, and it was last year that they have a supplier in Switzerland. And there were the whole area was flooded, so their supplier couldn't supply, and this is because of the climate crisis, and they had to, and Porsche is always performing, brilliantly, and they had to revise or renew their revenue expectation. They had to lower them because of this supplier couldn't supply. And it was not, it's not a bad supplier. It's just, climate change. The climate crisis is a real risk for this for Porsche, for this company. It's very interesting to read about it. There's been some news articles about it, and I think one of the best and worst cases of sustainability I found during my time at Fairtrade. Everybody in Germany knows the company Rittersport. Chocolate company. And the climate crisis, if you look into the future, if you have these foresight views and these scenarios, cocoa plants will die in the next, I don't know what years, I don't remember it exactly. So at Rittersport, I mean, if there's no cocoa, there's no Rittersport. It's very, very simple. So what Rittersport was doing, they were buying cocoa plant. They were building their own cocoa foundation, a sustainable cocoa foundation with the most sustainable practices, so that the success of the company would be secured for the future, because it's a family company. And these companies, they think in generations. They don't think in, I have to squeeze out revenue for my shareholders in the next 3 months. So for companies, there's a true sustainable business case, but that's true for very few companies, I would say. It's always good. I talked to a textile company, and they said they had 3,000 suppliers. It was a medium-sized textile company. Just imagine, you have to handle 3,000 suppliers. That's insane. And because they were building a sustainable supply chain management, they, for the first time in the whole company history, they were looking at these 3,000 suppliers and said, maybe we can cut ties with 2/3 of them to make it more manageable. So sometimes something out of the sustainability area, you know, because I poke in my job, I poke everywhere. I poke everywhere, and then there are some things that that no one's ever looked at. So sustainability can also be a driver for innovation, for more efficiency. Yeah, but I would say a sustainable business case, that's going to be tough to figure that out for most companies.
And I know that you are also very much interested in supply chains. You also mentioned supply chains as an example just before. I also find it very interesting to talk about this, both from a consumption or a consumer's perspective, but also from a company perspective. And basically, it's the same question that I would like to ask you. Why should we care about supply chains if it's not for moral reasons? So are there any other reasons why we should take this topic seriously? I know that on the European level, also on the German level, it has been a huge challenge to make progress on this, also supply chain laws and so on. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, you said it, you know, legislation. Every company wants to have a license to operate and not go to jail, not have their people go to jail because they work against the law. So this is one thing. Then the second thing is, as I mentioned, you know, of more efficiency. You know, if you have to manage 3,000 suppliers, and because of sustainability, you look at your supplier base and you manage it down, you reduce it to 1,000 suppliers, then this will get more efficient and more manageable. And also, if you have good relationships with your suppliers, you can really work with them and co-create. And for some businesses, that is very important. For others, not so much. But I remember in the textile company, it was about technical textiles. So the fabric itself was mostly the innovation. So what my colleagues would do, my colleagues who actually knew what they were doing, contrary to what I had no idea what I was doing. They really worked with the fabric suppliers and saying, oh, we need, because it was personal protective wear, and they said, we really need this and that fabric and with these performances, and what can you do? And sometimes sustainability can be a driver for this. I would say, you know, to have like better, you know, there's one guy who says, oh, we have to be more sustainable in our supply chain. And by default, this means to have better relationships with your suppliers. Yeah. Also, sometimes it's consumer expectations, but this is a very, I don't want to say shady because that's a negative word, but it's a very foggy topic, I would say, because sometimes, you know, consumers, they don't really reward truly sustainable companies. They reward companies that are perceived as sustainable.
So we started with an individual perspective, also your own work in sustainability. We then went a bit higher on a maybe more systemic question, systemic examples that you gave. And if now towards the end, we would try to break it down, like from the systemic level, when we look at global warming, climate change, global poverty, human rights, we think about supply chains, for example, as well. And we would like to break it down to a level that you and me, we can experience and we can feel as individuals. Are there possibilities to make that happen, to bring these abstract big challenges to a level that we can better understand as individuals and we can do something about it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think what you have to understand is that you will not solve as an individual or can barely contribute to the topic of global poverty. You know, and you can also barely contribute to extreme weather by not taking a flight. But then again, it's not a question of what can I do as an individual, but what happens if 1,000 or 1,000,000 or millions of individuals do it. You probably know Harald Welzer, who's
Tell me more.
he's I think he calls himself social philosopher. And I was at a reading once, and he writes about utopias, you know, how to get people involved in a better future. And he said this one sentence, and he said, civil movements never start with a large group of people. And that just clicked with me. He said, the women's rights movement, you know, there weren't 1,000 people on the streets from day one. Fridays for Future started with a small group. Eastern Germany, you know, they had protests for years every Monday, and it wasn't millions or thousands of people in the streets. So this is very important to understand that it's not about okay, we have to find a quick solution that goes for everyone that is perfect. So it's definitely possible, but understand that you can't solve, you know, the big problems, and also not try to get overwhelmed with it. Because if you think about, because there have been experiments, you know, what's the perfect sustainable lifestyle? And then you always find, you always find, even with the most sustainable guys, you always find, oh yeah, but they're not doing this and that. They're still doing this. So it's important not to get overwhelmed. And yes, so that's really important, I would say.
Yeah. And what you just say really reminds me of a conversation I had several years ago with a friend of mine who back then already was vegetarian. Now I'm also vegetarian, so he
Congratulations.
influenced me to some extent.
Yeah.
And we had exactly this conversation about influence. So back then he was telling me, I'm vegetarian, but I really don't want to influence you, anyone around me, to also be vegetarian.
Yeah.
And we had a long discussion about that because at some point I was thinking, if you are not interested in influencing anyone around you to be vegetarian, and you're okay with being the only vegetarian in your group or in your country or on this planet, it doesn't really change a lot. So there has to be, from my understanding, there has to be also the interest of influencing people around me, because otherwise what I do alone doesn't make sense. Or how do you look at this? Is this like not only doing it for me, but also trying to influence people around me? Is that a necessary part of this progress that we need?
Absolutely. It very much depends on how you do it. There's a joke saying, how do you know someone's vegan? Well, they tell you.
Yeah.
And also, you know, especially in Germany, I think the whole environmental movement in the 70s and 80s, they have done so much good. But unfortunately, what they also did was feeling better than the others, I think. And this is, you know, a lot of this, you know, all the Green Party shaming and blaming, and I think stems to a certain extent from that. So it's about finding the right interventions. And there's an example from this 1-year training that I did. There were some people in the group, and they said, we want people to use gender neutral language more. You know, we kind of had a democratic process on this. And then the outcome of this was one person in the group, there were, I don't know, 18 people. One person in the group gets a little sign with a heart on it. And then when one person doesn't use gender neutral language, the person who has this sign holds this up, you know, signaling, oh, you didn't use gender neutral language, but this is coming from a place of compassion and understanding. And in the end, we didn't do it. You know, the group decided this is not this is the if this is the best if this is the best outcome of this whole process, this is the best idea we can come up with, let's not do it. And then our lecturer, you know, our teacher, he said, this is not how you change systems, by giving them rules, you know, even if the rules have been developed in the group. This is not. And then I said, okay, then what the fudge? What are we doing here? You know, if you can't influence the system, I mean, how do you do it? And then he said, well, you know, a good intervention would have probably been giving a small insight, like a presentation on why gender neutral language is important. You know, that the system itself learns that this is important. And so I think it's about smart interventions here, and it's not about finding the perfect solution. And then, I mean, your friend is right. You know, if they don't want to influence others, then it's fine. But I think sharing ideas, and the train example was one thing, and I have another example. Years ago, I talked to a friend who was working at an organic supermarket chain in their sustainability department. And we were talking about fair trade ingredients. You said, well, you know, this is not on our agenda at the moment. We have the question that is discussed most at the moment is packaging, you know, packaging fruits and vegetables. And she said, well, you know, some people, they want to use a plastic bag, others want to use a paper bag. Then there are people who bring their own bag, and then there are people who go zero waste, who don't have a bag at all. And I thought, what a stupid idea. How can you not have a bag where you put your apples and bananas and, you know, your fruit and vegetables in? And then, you know, years later, and there were interventions by reading a blog about zero waste, and then the zero waste shops kept popping up. And I thought, I think it's a good idea. Now the idea of putting bananas in a plastic bag is why? Why do people do that?
Yeah, it's true. It's been a long time since I saw bananas in a plastic bag. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now when I see it, I think, why? Why do people do that? It's the perfect packaging, natural packaging.
I really love your examples on how to possibly change or not change a system. And it really reminds me also of, I think, important mindset when it comes, for example, to systemic coaching. Because in systemic coaching, for example, one important mindset from a coach's perspective is to be resource oriented. So you try to look where are the resources of that person to possibly change for the better. And the other word that you use, the word intervention, I also liked a lot, because again, when I think about coaching, it's about offering something as a possibility, but not as the one truth. It's about, you know, like a servant who brings some nice dishes in the restaurant, and you can have a look at it. And if you cooked it very well and you maybe arrange it nicely, the person will take it. But there should always be the choice that the person is not taking it or doesn't want it. And maybe that also links to what you said before, for example, about the struggles of the German Green Party or other organizations who are maybe in the last years forcing the dishes a bit too much into people's faces without making them feel that they can actually decide themselves. I don't know if that resonates with you.
It does on one level, but then on the other level, because I am a member of the Green Party, and I've also read somewhere that we can only, you know, get out of this misery with eco-dictatorship. You know, if everything is, if you force people to be more sustainable, and to a certain extent of, you know, one voice in my head says, yeah, that's right, let's do it, you know, not give people choices, because it took me years to, you know, I don't know, 4 or 5 years to understand, oh yeah, I can actually go to the south of France by train. And, you know, maybe 3 years to actually understand, yeah, I don't have to put 5 apples in a plastic bag. I can just put them in the cart, and then put them on the, you know, where you pay at the cashier.
Mm.
So it's going to take too much time if you really focus on the solutions and getting there. I think you need both. For example, think of smoking. You know, I know it's better for health, and but it wasn't a sustainability idea per se. It was more of a public health thing. That smoking was banned in official buildings. People did not like that.
Yeah, I remember those times. Yeah.
Yeah, people did not like that, and it's better for everyone. You know, it literally saves your life. And people say, no, they're intervening too much, and this is the private life. Then, you know, we could have a whole nother discussion about the liberal thinking and all of that, and the government shouldn't interfere. I think the government should interfere.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's more a question of where do you stand politically?
Yeah. But going back to this big question that you mentioned before about how to change systems, I think that you mentioned a really important point. And I think, for example, when we think about climate change, it's true that we have a time component, right? So
Yeah.
we cannot like probably when we believe in the science, we cannot wait until organically, you know, the whole world will just decide on their own. So I think you're really right about this idea of, yeah, to some extent also maybe forcing some change. Um, but I also believe that systems to some extent must also be ready to be pushed in a certain direction, right? Um, with the smoking, I remember these times. I also remember that there was a lot of criticism, even in the
Mm.
bars and everything.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I find it crazy. If I remember, I was sitting in the bar in the middle of winter, and it was full of smoke. All the clothes
Yeah.
was like smelling smoke. It was like, and now it's normal. And so I think
And you had,
it was a good moment for a little push that people were not accepting at first, but then understanding. Um, with sustainability, I feel to some extent, uh, I feel the challenge is a bit bigger still. And I was wondering with your example from before about having holidays in France. I would be curious if, for example, 5 years ago, if someone would have just forbidden you to go on a vacation that you would like to, if that would have caused resignation within you, or if you would go even more into a rebellion of saying, now that's even for me more important to, you know, defend my freedom and to go to, I don't know, Brazil or wherever you wanted to go back then. So do you think about these kind of maybe thresholds as well? Like how much push is okay and where is it getting maybe counterproductive?
yes, in my day job, definitely. Yeah, I have
Mm.
to you know, um you know, naturally I'm not the one to push boundaries. I'm trying to force myself to push them a bit more. But then it's always, you have to find a sweet spot, you know, how far can you go? But then I love authenticity. I love people with strong beliefs. You know, there's a sentence, if you stand for nothing, you fall for anything. And I like to stand for things. I like to have values. And it's, you know, very high expectations to my surroundings, in my private life, but also in work life. But you should definitely push boundaries. And for example, saying you're not allowed to fly to the south of France anymore. Yes, I surely would have found ways to fly. I surely would have said, you can't tell me what to do. But that's, you know, that's just the wrong intervention. The right intervention would be to make flying so expensive and so inconvenient that I would say, oh, thank God I can spend 12 hours on a train.
Yeah.
You know, what a pleasure that I
Mhm.
can. And yeah, and then try to see the positive sides also on this. Because, you know,
Yeah.
I was thinking everybody's saying, oh, the world is so fast, and, you know, I need to go slower to like the opposite of acceleration.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go on a train, man. Just just, you know, hop on a train for 12 hours and the world,
Yeah.
you can just, you know, see the world pass. You can listen to a lovely podcast, read a book.
Yeah.
You can't be on the phone, no.
Mm.
People say, oh yeah, well, my phone won't work. This is great. No one can reach you.
And it's even cheaper than some mindfulness seminar, probably.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
cheaper than flying as well, by the way.
Yeah. 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 Talking about positive sides, maybe to end with, can you share with us some low-hanging fruit that can be easily collected when we think about sustainability? Some easy things that I can do as an individual, or that I can also do as an organization, if, for example, people are listening who work in HR or in any organizations.
Yeah. Well, for the private life, I would say go to ecosia.de. You know, Ecosia is like the green Google. First thing,
Hmm.
like lowest hanging fruit ever. Just, you know, switch your search engine, and then type in a lazy guide. I have to read this. The Lazy Person's Guide to Saving the World.
Mm.
I love this. You know, there are so many, there are it's not overwhelming. There are like, I don't know, 10, 4 levels. First level is you can do this from your couch. And then fourth level is this is what you can do at work. And then they're just, you
Mm.
know, 10 suggestions, um, which is, you know, a great way to start. What I personally would say is the lowest hanging fruit. Stop buying stuff you don't need.
Mm.
Really, you know, do a no spend month. I'm in my third no spend month this year, and it's really nice. It's really nice. I was thinking, you know, the other day, you know what? I don't have, you know, these little packages anymore at home. And I thought, why? Oh yeah, because I didn't buy things I don't need.
Mm. Hmm.
Plus it saves you money. You know, just don't buy anything except, you know,
Mm.
food. This is a very low-hanging fruit. Saves you money, saves the planet, better for everyone. And I guess that, you know, this big online retailer, they have enough money. You know, when people say, oh, but you know, then the economy will collapse. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But just give it a try.
Yeah, I think there's still enough people ordering at this platform for now, so I
Yeah.
think it's the smaller problem, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
on an organizational level, giving advice to companies, giving like a low-hanging fruit is quite difficult, I would say, because it's so it's very specific to a certain company. What I would say is it's not really a low-hanging fruit because it takes time and effort and expertise, and it probably will cost you some money, is to do a really good materiality analysis. Now, a really good materiality analysis to find out what are the sustainability topics that are important to my organization. Because after that, I think it's the best strategy tool that is out there for sustainability strategy. What you do is you measure what positive and negative impacts do I have with my business on the environment and the society. And then you also look at what outward sustainability topics or challenges have a positive or negative impact on my financial success. And then you put those things together, and then you have your material topics. Because from there, you can, anything goes from there. Then you know, oh, talent is a attracting talent is a sustainability topic for me. And then you can develop actions from there. If you want a low-hanging fruit, collect what's already there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's you know, the materiality analysis is not the lowest hanging fruit. A low hanging fruit would be, look what's there, and you know, start having conversations with people, because you will probably find like-minded people in your organization.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good advice. Very, I think, practical and actually easy tips, both on the individual level and on the organizational level. Thank you very much for sharing that. And also thank you very much in general for being with us today, sharing many insights into the world of sustainability. I wish you all the best for your continuation of your career, wherever you continue to work for sustainability. And I hope very much that we will talk again very soon.
Yes, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
It was a pleasure, Caroline. See you
Thank
soon.
you. Likewise.